Hello YouTube, Robin Hood Bricks here, and today we're going to do part 4 of Brick Nottingham Castle, and we're going to finish off the remaining two sides of the walls. Now, in order to finish the remaining two sides of the castle, we could just use a lot more of these castle panel pieces, but then we'd end up with a side that we were looking at from the main viewing angle looking very much like this, the side facing the wall. And as you can see, it's very featureless and a bit repetitive, so I think we can do better than this by putting in some interesting features and maybe a tower or two. Now, just before we get started, I thought I'd show you some improvements I've made. I've added to the Mountaineer minifigure a climbing axe, as that was pointed out to me that was missing. And while I was there, I decided to add a rope for him to climb up. So this is another one of those cords with a stud on each end that I've used to do the drawbridge with. But the other end of this one is all the way up, attached to the top of the wall near where Robin is. Now for this back wall, I wanted to do something quite special because it's still very visible from the main viewing angle in the room, and that's pretty much the angle that we're looking at it now. So you can see that you'll be able to see that quite clearly. So I could put in another thing like the blacksmiths or the armory, which is just over there. But instead, I thought I'd add another very famous and well-loved element from the sets in the 1980s. And now if you ask any fan of the early castle sets what their favourite one is, probably 50% will say 6080, the King's Castle, and the other half will probably say 6074, Black Falcon's Fortress. And the main distinguishing feature of the Black Falcon's Fortress was the fantastic yellow turret at the back, which I always thought was where the Black Falcon himself would devise his evil plans and so on. So I thought I really had to replicate that. Now, fortunately for me, in one of the eBay auctions I won, where I was just trying to buy up old grey bricks, including a lot of these panels, in one of those auctions I actually got one of these in it. So that's one of the hardest bits to find. So that was very fortunate. The bad thing was that it turned out that this piece, this top pyramid type piece that goes right on the top, which arguably is as essential as the yellow panel, is very, very hard to get. And I had to pay a bit of a stupid price for that on a Bricklink order just to make this complete, but there was no other way around it. So I have, as you can see, just to ease time, I have made a little sub-assembly with a few more of these columns with the 1x1 round bricks, much like I've used as the boundaries around the blacksmith, just to give it the theme that continues throughout the castle, to give it a bit more detail. So I can pretty much put this straight in, if you bear with me. There's a lot of things to get lined up. And you might see, ooh, probably need to support that from underneath. You might see from a couple of angles a stained brick, and I've just noticed one there. That side is stained. That won't be visible when we've got this wall on that's going to be right here. So that's not a problem. And like I said in an earlier video, the odd stained brick when it's this old grey and it's these old sets and it's representing a castle that would have been built in the 1100s, it's not really so much of a problem. So don't know what this arch would represent, but it's an interesting feature. And we've got this lovely sort of room at the back, which, as I said, could be used for making evil plans in, or maybe just for Robin to stand in. But that is a really good colour contrast, and the yellow chimes really well with the yellow that's over the gate in the gatehouse. Fantastic. Now the theme I'm going for with a castle like this in a modern city like Brick Nottingham is that it's a tourist attraction. So we've already got some people to entertain our tourists, such as the juggling jester and the blacksmith. But I also think there'd be some knights sort of fighting combat. And I thought I could also have somebody who, an actor performing as part of the show who is in part of this tower. Now, an obvious choice would be the Series 12 wizard, because he could be sort of a Merlin type character. And I thought that was a good idea until I came up with a better idea of having the Series 13 evil wizard, which, let's face it, is better because he's got a huge cloak and skulls on and an angry face and a flaming torch. I mean, yeah, it's no contest really, is it? So I'll put him up here looking a bit mean. It's quite hard to position. There we go. Awesome. Right. Then moving on to this straight wall. Now we know that we've got the dungeon down here that it's going to connect with, but I'm trying not to make this completely flat like I said earlier. But it's quite hard. It's easier said than done really, because if I do some great big feature that's facing that way, you won't see it. If I do some great big tall feature, then you won't see what's already there. So to an extent, I am going to have to just put in a straight wall. Now, the first bit I've got is just a corner piece, which is patterned. Wherever I've got a patterned one, I've made sure it's in a prominent position. So all the plain ones are sort of on the back. So if I put that on, that is a good start. But I thought I could vary the wall from being exactly flat to sort of coming out a bit and then maybe going back in. And how I've done that is to do a sort of ornate double window. Now this is actually 7 wide, so we've got 2 sort of 3 wide arches making sort of windows, and this would be the sort of thing that a damsel in distress might hang out of or something like that. And I think that will be a welcome change, although only a subtle change, but it will be a welcome change from what would otherwise be a very straight wall. And then I've got a great big another piece. Now I have actually got 2 ladders, so there's another one here. We already had one there. And there's a third one that I've just put in that's just here that I should have showed you, but I can show you on an aerial picture later. So if I put this in, actually I'm going to have to take that off briefly. Put that on. And I can put this back. Very hard to do this on camera, to be honest, because it's quite big, even with these assemblies. Right, I'll push that down a bit better in a minute. Yeah, there we go. So you can see, hopefully, that has broken up that very straight wall quite a bit. I know this isn't quite pushed down, but this is also a continuous wall with a bit we did when we made Castle Rock, and goes straight into the dungeon, which will be very dark when it's in the Lego room. So, looking good. I think next we need to add some finishing touches. Now, just before we start adding some finishing touches, it occurred to me I had quite a few pieces left over that I could be using on the castle, especially quite a lot of these corner pieces. So I thought what I could do is make another tall tower, pretty much like the set 6086. It would add a lot of variety to this middle section. At the moment looks very uniform and flat. And I also thought that the guarded inn had an interesting part where it had a stable introduced, and all it did for the stable was to kind of have a flat area with a wall on either side. So the first thing I thought I'd do is do that. It's kind of like a lean-to really. So the stable would sort of be in there, in between one wall and the next. And it would also therefore give me a much wider and deeper part of the castle. So you could have a lot of people standing on this area guarding it. But then because I had the corner pieces as well, I thought, well, hold on, excuse me, Robin, that I could build a tall, thin minaret style tower. Now this uses the curved rampart pieces from 6086 as well, but those pieces weren't available in the original 1984 to 1986 sets. But it's a good use of a lot of these pieces, and it's sort of a bit unrealistic. I mean, you'd only be able to get a very, very tight circular staircase in there, but I thought that it would look potentially very good on there. I'm not going to push it down right now because it'd be very hard to do, but that will give a lot more interest and give us a third tower. The Gatehouse Tower, this minaret style tower, and obviously the Evil Wizard's Tower. Pretty cool. Right, I've pushed that down firmly now, and I think I'm going to keep it. I like it. I like the fact that it's tall and narrow in the middle, and regardless of where you look from, it doesn't block the view of either the armory or the blacksmith shop, and that's what I was most concerned about. So, given that you can see around it, I like it. I also had, luckily, 4 more of the triple sloped pieces that I used on my gatehouse, and that's just the right number I needed to just make this a bit more interesting and spiky. Now, as for details, one of the great things about this tower back in the day was the Black Falcon's flag with the Black Falcon on it, unsurprisingly. But as you know, the theme for my city is going to be the crown. So I've got a flag with the blue and white crown on both sides that I can add to pride of place. Well, let me just pan up a little bit. There we go. Pride of place on top of that tower. And that is the sigil or the sign of the king. So he is obviously not a real king. He's an actor playing the role of a king, but he was a king in the King's Castle set, not the one from the 80s, but one from a few years later, quite a few years later actually. I think it was about 2013 in set 70404. But I thought he'd be fun to have with his gold sword and all the rest of it. I know there's a series minifigure king, but he's very sort of flamboyant and a bit sort of caricatured. And this one's great because obviously he's got the relevant colouring being blue, and he's got the crown on his chain and so on. So I think he'll be the best for me. So I'm going to put him for now just on the ramparts looking over. Put him there. And then I've got some troops. So I need quite a few soldiers to guard my castle. So I've gone with these guys because they've got the crown on their belt, as you can see. I've given them the crown shields that are on my tower and in my armory shop. And I've given them all these halberds, which is a sort of tall, long spear with all these extra spiky bits on. Mainly because they're really interesting and they'll sort of stand out and look very prominent. So that's the reason why I've given them halberds. I don't think halberds were often used to defend castles, but, you know, why not? So I'll put one there. Put one on this front wall. And then there better be one right up in this tall tower, otherwise what's the point in having it? Okay. That looks good for this half. Let's add some details to the front half. Now, I did have these red and yellow flags, these sort of banner style pennant type flags hanging out the front. And I do like them because they're very much inspired by the original King's Castle in 1984. But I think I'm going to put them on the top here, because, you know, you can never have too many flags, because I want to put more crown ones on, because I've got 2 sticker sheets and you get and 2 on each sheet. So on the one that we added on top of the Evil Wizard's Tower, we did double-sided. But this I've done single-sided because it's going to be facing the wall on the other side. But it will look like a double-sided one. I've done that twice because I had, as I say, 2 sheets, so 4 stickers in total. And that just means I can have these sort of vertically hanging pennants like that with the sigil on again. So I think they look really, really good. So I'm definitely going to stick with that. I've got more soldiers, so put another one of those on maybe over the armory and spread them all out. I've got another one you can go on the top of the gatehouse, and I've got another one, so 6 in total. I'll put him on here. Is he going to be in the way of the portcullis? No, I think I can still work that with him there. So put him there. And the last detail for this entire castle, just to absolutely finish it off, is a knight on horseback with barding, which is basically horse armour, which they then, so it would be chainmail, but then they'd put like cloth over it, so it was patterned, and armour on the head of the horse as well. And he's got the shield, he's got his own lion sigil, but with a crown on his breastplate, and a sword, and he's looking pretty mean. And he's got a visor that goes down, that's got his blue feathers on it. So I can either have him coming out the stable or something like that. You can see these stairs now, there's one there, and then there's one here. So he can just be in the castle, having just got armoured up at the armoury, ready to charge out of the open drawbridge. Great, so I think that's the castle finished. Well, I say the castle's finished. I obviously spoke too soon because at the moment we've got a drawbridge hanging up in complete mid-air. So essentially I'm going to need another hill over here. I'm calling this one Castle Rock, which is a mountain, and then a hill which will be a smaller one, which will basically receive the other end of the drawbridge and let people get into the castle, be they tourists or evil knights, and that will have to be the subject of next time's video. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Do remember to like, comment and subscribe for more awesome LEGO videos. And next time on Robin Hood Bricks, we'll be putting this castle in the LEGO room and hopefully building the hill to take the drawbridge. See you then!